Granddaughter, behave yourself, and please don't fight. Grandma, what am I, a baby? No, of course you're not, just in case. Clara Bruce watched her granddaughter disappear into the group of children and sighed as she headed for the door. This was the third month in a row that she'd seen Emily off to the state-run daycare. It wasn't easy at first. Emily was used to a very different environment, and then nothing. Everything got better, everything but calm. Clara Bruce at gunpoint would not admit why they came here, where they came from, or how long they would live here. Everyone knew only one thing. Emily had a doctor's prescription for a change of climate, and her parents worked in another state. So, her grandmother came to live with her. The town was small, and the sea is literally 20 minutes away. By the way, Emily really was prescribed to breathe the sea air, so here grandmother Clara did not deceive. She had already rounded the corner when she was called out. Clara, what about tea together? The woman turned around. Prudence Black, nice to meet you, but I don't want to interrupt. At the back door of the dining room was a woman who looked to be in her 50s, but Clara knew she was only 43. Prudy was a warm and well-fed woman now, but before that, she had worked in a rubber factory for years. Clara, are you trying to hurt my feelings? Oh, come on, Prudy. I never meant to do that. I'm just worried you'll get a reprimand because of me. Oh, I was so afraid of all of them. I don't know what to say. And don't you worry. I don't take anything for the kids. It's just that we cook for everyone, and someone says he won't go to breakfast. But it's too late. The food is already ready for them. Come on. Today, I have a very tasty tea with cookies. One mother bought us a thank you. Well, what was Clara to do? She couldn't refuse Prudy, and it would be hard for her and Emily without the help of this kind woman. Clara Bruce could not yet receive her pension for good reason. Of course, she had taken money with her, but no one knew yet, not even Clara herself, how long she would have to live here with her granddaughter. They sat down at a table near the window. Prudy had already made breakfast for all the children in the nursery, so now she had free time. Lunch is almost ready, just needs stirring once in a while, so it's a good time to relax. Prudy, well, how is your little girl? Prudy's hand, with which she was holding the kettle, trembled a little. It's nothing new. She's crying, and I want to die. And the charity is still silent? Oh, I don't trust those foundations anymore, Clara. Yesterday, a lady called me and said, we can give part of the amount, but you have to sign as if you received the whole amount. I asked her, and where do I get the rest of the money? Who is going to help me if I sign for the whole amount? And she hangs up on me. How could that be, Clara? It wasn't their money, it was people's money. Clara sighed. She knew better than anyone about human injustice. Oh, Prudy, don't despair. She knew Prudy's story. An ordinary woman, lived, worked, married, and everything was good. She got a husband, bought a small but cozy house in the country. Then she got a second-hand car and decided to do some repairs. Her husband went to the country house one evening and her daughter followed him. At that time, she was only 11 and now she is 17. And near the country house of the village, that's where the truck with the drunk driver jumped out. The husband was gone on the spot. The daughter was barely saved, but only life was saved. The girl could no longer walk. Prudy sold the country house. She took her daughter to all the clinics, but the doctors only held their hands up. They almost put up with it, and 2 years ago, they found out that they now had to do operations like the girl needed, but for a fee. The amount was such that even working 3 jobs, it is unlikely she would have collected in half her life. She went to everyone. She wrote to all the foundations, but the situation did not change. Yes, I'm trying, Clara, but when I look at Beatrix crying, I can't help it. She understands that we won't raise that kind of money. I won't. They often had tea together and talked about life. Somehow, that's how they became friends, even though they were not the same age. Clara didn't tell her story much. She said right away, Prudy, don't be offended, but I can't yet. Maybe later. I'll tell you one thing. We had to run away, almost as if we were, just to save Emily. I really hope it all works out. My son-in-law was getting ready as if he knew. Only our names are real and everything else is foreign. By the way, it's my birthday on Saturday. Why don't we bake a cake and come to your house, Prudy? At least we'll have some fun. Why, that's a good idea. Come, but don't spend money on fancy ingredients. You don't have any money yourself. Well, let's see what we have, and we'll make it. Clara Bruce said goodbye. She wanted to go, but Prudy stopped her. Wait, here's some steamed cutlets and mashed potatoes. God, Prudy, thank you. I don't know how we'd survive without you." Prudy brushed it off. "We have to help each other." Claire accepted the container with tears in her eyes. She only tried to refuse at first, then realized it was useless. And so she was just very grateful. Prudy gave them enough food so they didn't have to spend a lot of money from their savings, and that provided another spare month of lodging. In the evening, after picking up their granddaughter from daycare, they did go to the store. Emily needed milk. Claire wanted to buy flour as well. The inexpensive flour had just arrived yesterday. You have to give Emily credit. Even though she was little, she understood that life was a little different now than it had been a few months ago. There was no mom or dad around, and there wasn't enough money to throw in the basket everything she wanted. "Grandma, are we having pancakes?" "Pancakes today. And on Saturday, you and I will bake a whole pie." "A pie? And I'll help?" "Of course you will. How can I do it alone?" Emily jumped up and down. "Oh, how great! How great!" Saturday was 2 days away. Clara wanted to put the dough in early, but she remembered that her grandmother had to be involved. "We'll have to wait, or she'll be offended. Judging by the fact that the granddaughter is hard to wake up, we'll have to wait a long time." Exactly 5 minutes later, a sleepy Emily showed up in the kitchen. "Grandma, did you not start without me?" Clara smiled. "Well, of course not, my dear. How could I?" They ate breakfast and got to work on the dough. Emily asked about Beatrix and Prudy. She was very eager to visit. They hadn't been visiting since they'd come here, and Emily loved to visit. She, Mom, and Dad often went to everyone. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she remembered her father taking them out at night. Then he kissed Emily tightly and said, "Well, Godspeed. I hope to see you soon." "Grandma, are Daddy and Mommy coming soon?" Claire Bruce froze for a second. "Yes, there's not much left to wait now." "That's good. Then I'll wait." Clara was immersed in memories. She knew that her son-in-law had not been a crystal clear man in the past. She knew he'd almost been locked up for gang-related activities. But she could see perfectly well how much he loved her daughter. He was a good man, she was sure. 6 years into their marriage, her son-in-law opened a business. The business was booming, which made a lot of people jealous, but they were afraid to touch him because he was an ex-gangster after all. Although there were no exes. One night, she went out into the kitchen for a glass of water and turned on the light, and her son-in-law was drinking cognac alone in the dark. "Stephen, what happened?" He looked at her foggy. "Have a drink with me, Clara." She didn't think for a second, though she disliked liquor terribly. She took a sip from her shot glass and asked, "Stephen, what's wrong?" "They're tight, Clara Bruce. They're so tight I can't breathe. They want to squeeze my business." "Who is squeezing, Stephen? The locals won't even go near you." "That's right, Clara Bruce. My mother-in-law's a hammer. Only it's not the locals. There's some people that we used to..." He hesitated for a moment, then said, "We used to be friends. See, they used to be all bandits, and now they want to live honestly. And to have something to live on, they decided to take it away from me." "Well, why? They think that it's normal to take from one's own. They've always lived that way." "What to do, Stephen? Does Grace know?" "Not yet, but she knows something's wrong." "Oh, my girls, they're tying my hands. I can't risk them." Clara thought for a second. "Stephen, so let's go away for a while so no one knows." The son-in-law looked at her. "You mean, you're my mother-in-law. You won't tell me to get lost, and you won't scream that all the bad luck is because of me?" Clara smiled. "Well, why won't? Of course I will. What am I, not a mother-in-law? But then I'll scream when it's over." It took them half an hour to get ready. There wasn't much cash in the house, but it should be enough for a few months of humble living. Stephen warned right away that it would definitely be at least a couple of months. He suddenly decided he wasn't going to be like the bandits. He was going to fight intellectually. "Grace, why aren't you packing?" "I'm not going anywhere, and that's out of the question." Stephen was shocked, and Clara only sighed. She suspected that would be the case. Grace stood up. "You're my husband. I'm not leaving you. Grandmother and Emily are going away. Don't forget that I'm a very good hacker." They threw away the SIM cards right away. The children knew which city they were going to, and that was it. "Grandma, are you ready to go yet?" "Yes, sunshine. While the cake's getting cold, you and I are gonna get dressed up." "Yay, we're going to visit." "Grandma, can't that girl walk at all?" "No, Emily." "Well, that's all right. I'll tell her everything so she won't be sad and interested." They had just left the house when 3 big black SUVs pulled up to the house. Claire Bruce grabbed Emily by the arm and ran around the corner of the house. They were almost there when they heard a scream. Mommy, Emily! Clara squeezed her eyes shut and stopped. Slowly, she turned and released her granddaughter's hand from hers. Emily rushed toward her parents. God, was it really over? Clara barely took a few steps as she was picked up by the strong arms of the guards. Then her son-in-law came up and her daughter. They stood in each other's arms for a long time. They were already talking at home. The son-in-law briefly described that not only had they completely sorted it out, but that as compensation, they had received a couple of firms of those who wanted to profit from it. Grace said it had been interesting, but she didn't want any more because she was so bored she couldn't even talk. Mom, were you going somewhere? I see you baked a cake. Oh, honey, yes. I'll get there anyway. I promised, because I have... Before she could finish, her son-in-law and daughter screamed, "Birthday!" Stephen immediately disappeared somewhere and appeared with a large bouquet of her favorite white chrysanthemums. And we didn't forget. After calming down a bit, Clara talked about Prudy, her life, her grief, and how she had risked her job to help them, to free them. Grace stood up. We'll go with you too. We're all going, aren't we, Emily? Yes, yay! Prudy looked out the window. Strange, Clara's never late. Beatrix grinned sadly. Maybe they changed their minds. Well, why go to a house where everything is depressing? Nep, daughter, don't talk nonsense. You don't know her at all. Prudy saw that Beatrix was staring out the window and not reacting to her words. Beatrix, what is it? Mom, there's a caravan of some kind, as if the president was being brought in. Well, you'll think of one too. A second later, Prudy and Beatrix watched in amazement as Clara got out of the car and pointed to their windows. Oh wow, so things are working out for them. So the kids have arrived. The whole crowd rushed into the apartment. Prudy didn't know where to put such guests. Stephen looked over at the table, said something to the guard at the door, and he disappeared. Half an hour later, he was back with full bags. I'm sorry, Prudence, for giving the orders, but we've been on the road for over 24 hours and we're very hungry. Grace was talking passionately about something with Beatrix, then called somewhere, then took pictures. Girls, are you going to eat? Yes, we are. Grace got up and naturally drove Beatrix to the table. The girl's cheeks were flaming and she was afraid to say where she had just called, even to her mother. An hour later, when everyone was just talking, Grace's phone rang. Yes, thank you. In 3 days? Thank you. She hung up. So it's bedtime, everybody. We're all leaving tomorrow. It's a 24-hour drive. We need to rest. In 3 days, Beatrix has to go into surgery. Prudy collapsed in her chair. How? It costs so much. Stephen smiled. I don't think it's any more expensive than your attitude toward Mom and Emily. Clara wiped away her tears. It was the first time her son-in-law had ever called her Mom.